The day my son-in-law, Tyler, smiled and told me, "Dad, I've got a little favor to ask." I didn't realize he was about to turn my dream home into a nightmare. The sound of hammers and saws was the only music I needed. For 3 months, I'd lived by the rhythm of wood and wind, finishing the cabin I had always promised my late wife, Martha. It sat deep in the Oregon woods, where mist curled between pines and no one bothered to knock. The house wasn't big, but every beam had a memory. I could still picture Martha smiling when I told her, "We'll retire out here someday." Someday never came for her. When she passed, I thought I'd lost the purpose behind building it. But one spring morning, I drove up to the property alone, unpacked my old toolbox, and decided to finish it anyway. Every nail, every brushstroke was therapy. When the final window went in and the chimney smoked for the first time, I felt peace. That peace ended the moment Tyler's truck appeared at the end of the gravel road. He stepped out with his usual salesman grin, the kind that tried too hard. My daughter, Emma, had married him 5 years ago. He wasn't cruel, just shallow. Everything about him was temporary: jobs, cars, promises. "Leonard," he called, waving. "Wow, you really did it. Place looks amazing." I smiled politely, wiping my hands on a rag. "Didn't think you'd drive all the way out here." "Yeah, well," he said, walking up the porch steps like he already owned the place. "Emma told me you finished it, so I figured I'd come see. You got time to talk?" The way he said that made my stomach tighten. Tyler never visited without wanting something. He looked around, admiring the view, the tall pines, the calm lake in the distance. "Man, this would be perfect for my folks. They love nature. Quiet, no neighbors, fresh air." I froze mid-step. "Your folks?" "Yeah," he continued, still smiling. "They're kind of in a tough spot. Their lease is ending, and I thought maybe they could stay here for a bit. Just a week or two, tops." I stared at him, thinking maybe I'd misheard. "Stay here? In my house?" "Just until they find a place," he said quickly. "You've got space, and you're always talking about being lonely out here. Wouldn't hurt to have some company, right?" He grinned, but I didn't return it. Martha's photo sat on the fireplace mantel behind him, watching. "Tyler," I said carefully, "this house is where I come to be alone. It's not a rental. It's my home." He nodded too fast. Of course. I get it. Just think about it, okay? I'll bring it up to Emma too." That phrase, "I'll bring it up to Emma," told me the decision was already made. After he left, the forest felt colder. The piece I'd built brick by brick began to crumble. I spent that night staring into the fire, wondering how long before my quiet world was invaded. 2 weeks later, it happened. I woke up to the sound of tires crunching gravel. When I stepped onto the porch, a moving truck was parked outside. Tyler stood beside it, phone in hand, waving like this was a friendly surprise. "Morning, Leonard." "They're here. They're here." 2 people climbed out of the car, a man and woman in their 70s, dressed like they were heading to a family reunion, not a temporary stay. "Mom, Dad, this is Leonard," Tyler announced cheerfully. "You'll love it here." They smiled politely, but I could already see the judgment in their eyes, scanning my porch, the tools, the old rocking chair Martha used to love. "Oh, it's rustic," his mother said. "No TV." "There's one upstairs," I replied flatly. Tyler clapped me on the shoulder. "Told you it'd be fine. Just a short stay." I didn't say a word. Not when they carried in their luggage. Not when they started rearranging the kitchen. Not even when his father asked if the Wi-Fi reached the guest room. That evening, I stood by the lake, the water still and dark as glass. The cabin lights glowed behind me. It wasn't mine anymore, not really. Their laughter echoed through the windows, too loud for a place built for silence. And yet, I didn't raise my voice. I didn't confront them. I just watched. Because something inside me, that quiet, steady part that had survived everything else, whispered, they don't know who they're dealing with. If they wanted to stay in my house, fine. Let them. I'd already started thinking about the surprise Tyler mentioned. And by the time they realized what I'd prepared, it would be far too late to pack their things. The first night they were here, I didn't sleep. Every creak of the floorboards felt like an invasion. Every whisper from the guest room reminded me this was no longer my sanctuary. I sat by the window until dawn, watching fog roll through the trees, thinking about how easy peace is to lose and how hard it is to get back. By morning, Tyler's parents were already making themselves at home. His mother, Susan, wore a floral robe and slippers as if she'd been living there for years. She opened every cabinet, inspecting plates and jars like a detective searching for evidence of bad taste. His father, Carl, had turned on the TV so loud I could hear the news anchor echoing through the kitchen walls. "Leonard, do you have any real coffee?" Susan asked. "That instant stuff is terrible for the stomach." I blinked, holding my mug. "That's the coffee I drink." "Oh," she said, smiling faintly. "Well, different generations, I guess." Carl chuckled from the couch. "You got any sports channels? I'm not into all these nature shows." I didn't answer. I just walked outside, where the air still smelled of pine and rain. The cabin looked smaller now, not because of size, but because of noise. That night, Tyler and Emma came over for dinner. Emma hugged me, warm and distracted, smelling of city perfume and exhaustion. "Dad, I can't believe how nice this place looks," she said. "You finally did it." I smiled. "Yeah, I did." Tyler grinned, setting down a bottle of wine. "See, Emma, I told you your dad wouldn't mind them staying for a while. He's got that big extra room and—" "Wait," Emma interrupted, turning to me. "You said it's okay, right, Dad?" I looked at her. She was tired, I could tell, working long shifts, juggling bills, following Tyler's half-cooked plans. I didn't want to add another burden. So I said softly, "It's fine for now." Tyler smiled like a man who'd just closed a deal. Days turned into a week, and their short stay began to stretch like a rubber band ready to snap. Susan started moving my things to make it feel more open. Martha's old quilt vanished from the couch. Her picture from the mantel ended up on a side table near the window. Carl decided the front yard needed some improvement. I came home from town to find my flower beds dug up and replaced with cheap garden gnomes. Every day, a little piece of my peace disappeared. I noticed how they spoke to me, not cruelly, just dismissively, as if I were a tenant in my own house. They cooked without asking, used my tools, criticized the draft in the windows I'd built by hand. The final straw came one afternoon when I overheard Susan talking on the phone. "Yes, the cabin's nice," she said, laughing softly. "But Leonard's too old to manage it. Tyler said we might just stay permanently if he agrees to move into the city with Emma." I froze in the hallway, every muscle stiff. Permanently. They weren't planning to leave. They were planning to take over. That evening, while everyone sat around watching a game, I went out to the tool shed. I stood there for a long time, running my fingers over the old hammer I'd used to build the place. The same tool that had carved every part of my solitude. I realized something then. You can't argue with people who see kindness as weakness, but you can teach them what happens when they mistake silence for surrender. So, I started planning. Not a fight, not a confrontation, something quieter, smarter. Martha used to say I had a craftsman's patience. She was right. Over the next few days, I made small changes they didn't notice. I adjusted the heating vents in the guest room so they'd rattle at night whenever the wind blew. I slightly loosened the screws on the dining chairs, just enough to make them creak under pressure. I swapped the coffee labels, decaf in the regular jar, regular in the decaf. Nothing harmful, just enough to make them uncomfortable. When Susan complained about the strange noises and Carl started losing sleep, Tyler brushed it off. "It's the woods," he said. "Old houses do that." I said nothing. Then one evening, when the power flickered during a storm, I saw real fear in their eyes. They weren't used to darkness, to quiet, to being away from their glowing screens and city noise. I offered them candles. "The generator's out," I said. "Might be a long night." Carl muttered, "This place is cursed." I smiled faintly. "No, it's just alive." They didn't get the meaning, but they would, because my surprise was almost ready. It wasn't revenge, exactly. More like a reminder that this house was built with care, and those who disrespected it would never find comfort in it. That night, as the storm howled outside and the cabin walls groaned like an old ship, I walked room to room, whispering softly to Martha's photo on the mantel. "They'll be gone soon, love. I promise." And deep in the woods, a generator flickered to life again, powering not just the lights, but the first stage of my plan. The next morning, the forest was soaked in silver light. Rain clung to the pines, and fog drifted low over the lake. I stood on the porch with my coffee, listening to the world breathe. Inside, though, the air was restless, filled with voices that didn't belong. Susan was complaining again. "Leonard, this bedroom is freezing." The heater doesn't work properly. I smiled faintly. That's strange. It was fine before. She crossed her arms, shivering in her pink sweater. Well, it's not now. Maybe you should have someone look at it. I built this place myself, I said calmly. I'll take a look. She didn't know the vent was doing exactly what I wanted, rattling softly at night, whispering like the wind through hollow bones. The sound had already stolen 2 nights of her sleep. I checked the thermostat, made a show of adjusting it, and left. The truth was simple. She didn't need warmth. She needed to remember whose house she was in. Carl wasn't much better. He spent his mornings watching TV and his evenings complaining about that weird smell in the guest bathroom. I'd added a drop of pine oil to the vents there, something natural, harmless, but strong enough to make the air feel unfamiliar. He grumbled all day. This place gives me the creeps. I overheard him telling Tyler over the phone. The walls creak, the lights flicker, and that old man just stares at us like he's guarding a secret. He wasn't wrong. When night came, the woods turned black, thick with fog. I'd lived there long enough to know every sound, every owl call, every branch cracking in the wind. But to outsiders like them, the silence was alive, heavy, watching, and I made sure it watched them. I placed small, motion-activated lights near the windows outside, set to flicker when someone walked past. I even tuned an old radio in the attic to a faint static hum, just enough to echo faintly through the vents at night. To them, it must have sounded like whispers. 3 days later, Susan came to breakfast pale and trembling. "Leonard," she said, clutching her mug. "I swear I heard something last night. Someone was walking upstairs." Carl rolled his eyes. "It's the damn house settling." "No," she insisted. "It was footsteps. Slow ones." I sipped my coffee, pretending to think. "Maybe Martha's still checking in," I said softly. The look on her face was priceless, half fear, half disbelief. "Martha," she whispered. "My wife," I said. "She loved this cabin. Sometimes I still feel her here, especially when someone disturbs her things." Susan's eyes darted to the mantel, where Martha's photograph sat, the same one she'd moved a few days ago. After that, she didn't touch anything again. That evening, the storm returned. Winds slammed against the windows, and the forest seemed to breathe through the walls. The generator flickered, the lights dimmed, and Carl muttered under his breath, "Damn place is haunted." They retreated to their room early, doors locked. I stayed up by the fire, Martha's old quilt around my shoulders. The rain hammered the roof like 1,000 tiny fists, and I felt something close to satisfaction. Not joy, not cruelty, just balance. People like Tyler and his parents never understood the kind of peace that lives in silence. They filled everything, rooms, conversations, lives, until there was no space left for respect. But the woods had a way of humbling people. The next morning, Tyler arrived, face red from the drive, Emma following behind him. "Dad, what's going on?" he asked. "My parents are saying weird stuff. Ghosts, noises, things moving on their own. You sure everything's okay here?" I nodded. "Perfectly fine. Maybe they're just not used to the quiet." Susan stepped forward, shaking. "Don't tell me it's the quiet, Leonard. We saw lights outside last night. Someone was walking near the window." "Maybe a deer," I said evenly. "Or a shadow." Carl snapped. "It wasn't a deer. We're packing up. I've had enough of this creepy house." Tyler turned to them, embarrassed. "Come on, Dad, Mom." But Susan was already heading upstairs. "We're leaving. Today." I didn't stop them. I helped them carry their boxes back to the car, smiling the whole time. Tyler looked at me helplessly. "You could have told me if something was wrong." "Maybe I could have." "There's nothing wrong," I said. "This house just wasn't built for everyone." Emma watched me quietly, like she knew there was more to the story. "You sure you'll be okay alone again, Dad?" I nodded. "Always." When the cars disappeared down the gravel road, the silence returned, full, rich, alive. I stood there for a long time, letting the calm sink back into my bones. Then I walked inside, turned off the radio in the attic, removed the batteries from the motion lights, and closed the vents I'd tampered with. Everything was as it should be. Before heading to bed, I whispered toward Martha's picture. "They won't come back, love." The house scared them off for good. And for the first time in weeks, I slept deeply, until the sound of tires crunching gravel woke me again at dawn. I looked out the window and saw Tyler's car parked out front. Alone. He stood there in the rain, hands in his pockets, eyes down. When I opened the door, He didn't smile. Dad? He said quietly, I need to talk to you. It's about Emma. The way he said her name made my chest tighten. Come inside, I said. He stepped over the threshold, dripping water onto the wooden floor. The fire crackled behind us, filling the silence. What happened? I asked. He hesitated, then said, She's not doing well. She feels guilty about all this. She thinks maybe I pushed too far. I stayed quiet. He looked up, eyes glassy. She wants to move in with you for a while. Just her. To get away from me and everything else. For a moment, I felt torn. My daughter, my only child, needed me. But bringing her here meant reopening wounds I'd just closed. Still, Martha's voice echoed softly in my mind. Family is worth one more chance. I sighed. Tell her she can come. Tyler nodded, relief flooding his face. Thank you, Leonard. Really. But as he turned to leave, I couldn't help but think. If Emma was coming back to this house, peace might not last long. And I had a feeling Tyler wasn't done with his plans either. When Emma's car appeared at the end of the drive, the woods felt different. Quieter, almost respectful, like the trees themselves knew my daughter was coming home. I stepped out to greet her. She got out slowly, her hair tied back, eyes red from crying. She looked smaller than I remembered, not physically, but in spirit. She smiled faintly, trying to sound cheerful. Hi, Dad. I opened my arms, and she fell into them. For a long time, neither of us spoke. Just the wind, the smell of rain, and the sound of her heartbeat against my chest. When she pulled back, she looked around. It's beautiful here, she whispered. Peaceful. It was, I said with a small grin. Still can be. She laughed softly, the sound breaking through her sadness for a moment. You sound like Mom. I felt something tighten in my throat. Your mother would have loved having you here. She looked down. I know. That evening, we sat by the fire, the same fireplace where Martha's picture still stood. Emma watched the flames and said quietly, I'm sorry for what happened with Tyler's parents. I didn't know they just showed up like that. It's not your fault, I said. He made his own choices. She nodded. Yeah, he always does. I didn't push her, but I could tell something else was hiding behind those words. After dinner, she walked through the cabin, touching the wooden beams, running her fingers over the handmade shelves, the carved banister. You built all this yourself? Every nail, I said. It feels alive, she whispered. Like the house remembers things. I smiled faintly. Maybe it does. For the first time in months, the cabin felt warm again. Emma cooked breakfast in the mornings, humming like her mother used to. She cleaned, rearranged flowers, left candles near the windows. It wasn't Martha's touch, but it was close, gentle, thoughtful. But peace in my world never lasted long. One afternoon, I came back from chopping firewood and found Emma on the porch, phone pressed to her ear, tears streaming down her face. She hung up quickly when she saw me. Tyler? I asked. She nodded, wiping her eyes. He said he's coming here tomorrow. He wants to talk. I felt the calm in my chest shift into something colder. About what? She hesitated. He didn't say, but I think he wants me to convince you to sell this place. The words hit like a hammer. Sell it. She nodded. He's been talking about buying property for his business. He said the land here is worth a lot, and that if we sold, we could all benefit. I set down the log I was carrying and looked out at the forest, the endless green stretching beyond the lake. He's still the same boy who wants everything that isn't his. Dad, she said softly, please don't start a fight. I just want peace. I turned to her. I won't start one, but I won't let him win one either. That night, I couldn't sleep. The wind outside howled through the trees, whispering through the cracks of the cabin like a warning. I thought about Tyler's face, his easy smile, his way of using words as weapons. He'd sent his parents here to test me, to see if I'd bend. And now, he was coming himself to finish the job. I poured a drink, sat by the fire, and stared at Martha's picture. He wants to take what's ours, love. But not this time. The fire cracked softly, like an answer. Tyler arrived late the next morning, wearing his usual fake charm, a leather jacket, designer watch, and that salesman's grin that never reached his eyes. Leonard, he said, stepping out of his truck with forced cheer. Good to see you again. I didn't move from the porch. Wish I could say the same. He laughed awkwardly, glancing at Emma. Okay, look, I know things got weird with my parents. Weird? I interrupted. You mean when they tried to turn my home into a nursing hotel? He raised his hands. Fine, fine, I messed up. But that's why I'm here. I want to make things right. I studied him. Go on. He smiled that rehearsed smile. You're getting older, Leonard. Maintaining this property's gotta be hard. The taxes, the upkeep. I could help with that. If you'd consider selling it, or transferring partial ownership to Emma and me. Emma's eyes widened. Tyler, I never. He cut her off. It's just smart planning, babe. Think about the future. This land could make us a lot of money. I leaned forward on the porch rail. You think I built this house to sell it? You think you can come here, smile, and walk away with what my wife and I dreamed of? His expression hardened. I'm offering a fair deal. But if you don't take it, the county might. You know how these property taxes work. He was bluffing, but he didn't know I already handled every bill, every tax, every legal detail. Emma stood up, trembling. Stop it, Tyler. This isn't about business. You're just trying to take control again. He glared at her, then back at me. You've turned her against me. You always have. Maybe she just started seeing clearly, I said. For a long moment, we stood there, the rain falling between us like a curtain. Finally, he muttered, You'll regret this, Leonard. Maybe, I said, but I'll do it in peace. He stormed back to his truck, tires spitting mud as he drove away. Emma stood on the porch, shaking. I'm sorry, Dad. I didn't know he'd come here like that. I put a hand on her shoulder. You've got nothing to apologize for. But I think Tyler's not done yet. That night, as we locked the doors and drew the curtains, I noticed headlights in the distance, just for a second, behind the trees. They vanished quickly, but my gut told me the truth. Tyler wasn't gone. He was watching. And if he wanted to play games around my house, then maybe it was time the forest played back. The forest is never silent at night, not truly. Even when the wind sleeps, the trees whisper. Branches creak. The lake sighs. But that night, the stillness felt different, tense, like the woods themselves were holding their breath. Emma had gone to bed early, exhausted from the argument with Tyler. I stayed up, pretending to read by the fire, though my eyes never moved across the page. The storm had passed, but my instincts hadn't. At midnight, I heard it, the low crunch of tires on wet gravel. Headlights cut through the trees for an instant, then vanished. The engine died, and silence returned, thicker this time. I didn't move. I just waited. A few minutes later, the faint click of a door opening echoed through the still air, followed by soft footsteps in the mud. He was back. Tyler. He thought I wouldn't notice. He thought old men slept deeply. I stood slowly, the floorboards sighing beneath my feet. The clock ticked past 12. I slipped on my boots, pulled my flannel tight, and stepped quietly onto the porch. The moon hung low, veiled by mist. I could barely make out his silhouette near the side of the cabin, flashlight in hand, phone pressed to his ear. Yeah, I'm here, he whispered. No, she's asleep. I just need to grab the documents from the drawer. He'll never notice. Trust me. He paused, listening. No, don't worry about the noise. The old man's half-deaf. I smiled faintly in the dark. Half-deaf? Sure. He crept toward the porch door, light bouncing off the glass. I watched from the shadows near the shed, my breath slow and steady. When he reached for the handle, I stepped into the moonlight. Looking for something, Tyler? He jumped like he'd been shot. His flashlight hit the porch floor, flickering weakly. Jesus, Leonard. You scared the hell out of me. Not hard to do, I said. He straightened, trying to recover his fake confidence. I left some papers here last time. Figured I'd grab them before Emma woke up. Didn't want to bother anyone. In the middle of the night? He forced a laugh. You know traffic's lighter now. Didn't want to wait. I studied him for a long time, the firelight from inside flickering across his face. His eyes darted everywhere but mine. Papers are in the drawer, I said finally. Go ahead. He blinked, unsure if it was a trap. Thanks. He stepped inside, shaking rain from his jacket, and made his way toward the study. I followed quietly, hands in my pockets. He rifled through drawers, muttering under his breath, but I noticed what he was really doing. Looking, searching. His gaze flicked toward the safe built into the wall near the desk. The one Martha and I had used for her jewelry and important deeds. You're looking in the wrong place, I said. He froze. Whatever you're after, I continued softly. You won't find it there. He turned, forcing a nervous grin. Come on, Leonard. Don't be paranoid. I told you I just needed some. Papers, I finished. Yes, you said that. But papers don't glitter, do they? He went still. The fire crackled behind me, the sound filling the room. I stepped closer, my voice low. You think I don't know about the loans, Tyler? About the house you mortgaged under Emma's name without telling her? His jaw tightened. Who told you that? She didn't need to. I can read a man's desperation like blueprints. He took a step back, defensive now. You don't understand. I just needed capital. The business. Your business is lies, I interrupted quietly. And now you're trying to turn my daughter's grief into profit. He glanced toward the window, calculating, as if he could still run. Go ahead, I said. Try. But you won't like what's waiting out there. His brow furrowed. What do you mean? The woods, I said softly. They don't take kindly to thieves. He tried to laugh it off, but I saw the tremor in his hand. You're bluffing. I nodded toward the front door. Am I? He turned, and the moment his hand touched the knob, the porch light flickered, just like I'd set it to. The motion sensor caught him instantly, throwing his shadow long and sharp against the wall. Then came the sound, low, mechanical, rising from beneath the floorboards. He froze. What the hell is that? Generator vent, I said calmly. Kicks on when someone walks near the sensor. But to someone who doesn't know this house. I let the words hang. The air pressure changed slightly as the automatic shutters creaked into place. The ones I'd installed last year for storms, now closing every window in sequence with heavy thuds. Tyler's eyes darted around, panic blooming. What's going on, Leonard? Just safety measures, I said, leaning against the doorframe. You never know who might try to break in. He backed away. You're insane. Maybe, I said, but I'm the kind of insane that sleeps well at night. He lunged for the door again, but it wouldn't budge. I told you, I murmured. The woods don't let go easily. He pounded on the door, shouting my name. I let him sweat a minute longer before hitting the release switch near the fireplace. The locks clicked, and the shutters rolled open again. He stumbled outside, gasping. Don't come back, I said from the porch. Next time, you'll find the woods less forgiving. He stared at me, eyes wide, breath steaming in the cold. Then he ran to his truck, tires skidding as he tore down the dirt road. When the sound of his engine finally disappeared, I stood there, listening to the forest reclaim its calm. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I just whispered to the night. That was your final warning, Tyler. Behind me, the fire crackled. Upstairs, Emma still slept peacefully, unaware that her father had just protected her from something far darker than a property dispute. But I knew this wasn't over. Men like Tyler don't accept defeat quietly. They come back louder, and sometimes they bring others with them. So I began preparing again. Only this time, my surprise wouldn't just scare him. It would end everything. 3 nights passed after Tyler's midnight visit. The air around the cabin had changed, colder, sharper, like the woods themselves were waiting for something. Emma noticed too. Dad, she said one morning over coffee, you've been on edge lately. Is everything okay? I forced a small smile. Everything's fine, sweetheart. Just making sure we're safe out here. She gave me that look, the one Martha used to give when she knew I was hiding something. You're not planning anything, are you? I shook my head. No plans. Just preparation. But in truth, every day since that night, I'd been preparing. I'd spent years learning how to build things that lasted, structures that could bend but never break. The forest had taught me patience. And Tyler had taught me exactly how far arrogance could stretch before it snapped. I'd already reinforced the perimeter, installed a few new motion lights, and quietly reconnected an old set of trail cameras I'd once used to watch for bears. But this time, they weren't for animals. Each one was pointed at the road leading in. And that's how I saw them. 2 trucks, headlights cutting through the trees like knives, rolling toward my property late Friday night. Tyler was in the front seat. In the second truck sat 2 men I'd never seen before. Heavy, broad, wearing dark jackets. Contractors, maybe. Or the kind of friends you hire when you can't solve problems with words. I didn't panic. I just turned off the lights inside and waited. Emma was already asleep upstairs, and I intended to keep her that way. The truck stopped at the gate. Doors opened. Boots hit gravel. I could hear Tyler's voice, low, determined, ugly. Don't break anything, he said. We're just getting the safe open and grabbing the papers. He's probably asleep. So that was his plan. Simple, stupid, and perfect for what I'd prepared. I moved to the breaker panel and flipped 2 switches. The first one disabled the porch lights. The second activated a circuit I'd wired 2 days ago, something I called the warning system. Outside, the floodlights near the tree line flickered to life, one by one, bathing the road in cold white. The men froze. I saw them hesitate on the camera feed. Tyler's voice came again, irritated. "It's motion sensors. Just keep moving." They walked up the path, flashlights cutting through fog. The forest had gone dead quiet. Not even the crickets dared to speak. Then, from the darkness, a deep groan echoed, wood bending under unseen weight. They stopped again. "What was that?" one man muttered. "Old cabin," Tyler said, though I could hear the tremor in his voice. "Ignore it." But the groan came again, closer this time, followed by a soft metallic clang. They didn't know I'd rigged an old wind chime to the lower branches, tied to fishing line that ran across the path. Invisible in the dark, but sharp as a tripwire. The first man walked straight into it. The sound that erupted, that piercing rattle through the fog, made them all flinch back. "What the hell, man?" the man barked. Tyler cursed. "It's just junk. Keep moving." They made it halfway to the porch before the next surprise hit. Hidden speakers I'd buried near the tree line crackled to life, playing faint whispers, real recordings from the woods, stretched and distorted. It sounded like voices calling from the distance. "Leonard," one whispered. "Still here," murmured another. Tyler froze. "Turn that off." But no one could find where it came from. One of the men turned toward the sound, and that's when the second trap triggered, a motion-activated flare near the base of a pine. A single flash of blinding red light tore through the mist, painting their faces like blood. They stumbled back, shouting. "Enough!" Tyler yelled. "He's just an old man trying to scare us. Go get the door open." He ran ahead, up the porch steps, boots thudding against the wood. The others followed reluctantly. Inside, I waited by the fireplace, the room dark except for the faint glow of embers. When the door handle turned, I was already ready. The second they stepped in, I flicked a switch near the mantel. Every floodlight outside cut off. Darkness swallowed the forest. Tyler's voice cracked. "Leonard." I let silence answer him for a few seconds. Then I spoke, calm, even close. "You shouldn't have come back, Tyler." He spun toward the voice, but I was already moving behind him. "You brought company," I continued. "That's brave." "Where are you?" he shouted. I stepped forward from the shadows, holding nothing but Martha's old lantern. The flame inside flickered, painting my face in gold and shadow. "This house doesn't welcome thieves," I said. One of his men started forward, but the floorboards under his foot gave way slightly, right where I'd loosened the plank earlier that day. The noise was loud enough to freeze him. "Take another step," I said softly, "and the next board might not hold." He backed up immediately. Tyler's confidence cracked completely. "You're crazy, Leonard. This isn't your land anymore. You can't just—" I cut him off. "I checked the deed this morning. Still got my name on it." He stared at me, chest heaving, caught between rage and fear. "You think this is over?" he hissed. "I'll call the cops." I nodded toward the corner. "Go ahead." He turned his head and saw the cameras. Every inch of his trespassing recorded, every word, every threat. He knew it too. I saw the realization hit him like a brick. "You broke in, Tyler," I said quietly. "You brought men to my home. You came for what isn't yours. I don't need revenge. I just need the truth to do its job." He looked like he wanted to argue, but he didn't. He just stood there, pale, shaking. I opened the front door. "Leave. All of you." For a second, no one moved. Then the two men pushed past him, muttering under their breath. Tyler lingered, eyes burning with humiliation. "You'll regret this," he whispered. "Maybe," I said, "but at least I'll regret it in my own home." He stormed out, slamming the door behind him. The forest was still again. I turned off the lantern and looked around the cabin. Quiet, whole, alive. My traps had done their job. But deep down, I knew something was shifting. Tyler was desperate now, and desperate men didn't stop at warnings. They came back one last time, not for money, but for pride. And when that happened, I'd be ready. For a few days, things went still again. Too still. The woods had a strange calm, the kind that always comes before a storm. I could feel it in my bones, in the way the air seemed to tighten around the cabin. Emma noticed it too. She'd begun to smile again, cooking, reading by the fire, humming old songs Martha used to love. But sometimes, when the wind howled, she'd look up at the window and ask softly, "Dad, do you think he'll come back?" I always gave the same answer. He won't dare. But I didn't believe it. Not really. Men like Tyler never walk away when they lose. They circle back, trying to reclaim their pride, even if it destroys them. It was a Thursday night when I felt it. The same vibration under the floorboards, the faint echo of gravel crunching down the drive. I turned off the lamp and looked out through the curtain. One car this time. Tyler's. He was alone. I didn't wake Emma. She needed her rest, and I needed this to end. The moon was high, pale as bone, when he stepped out of the car. His face looked worn, hollow-eyed. He wasn't smiling anymore. He carried a duffel bag, slung over his shoulder, and moved like a man who'd already lost everything. I opened the door before he could knock. "Leonard," he said quietly, "we need to talk." "Seems like that's all we ever do," I replied. He looked past me, into the dark house. "Is Emma here?" "She's asleep," I said. "You won't wake her." He nodded. "Good. This isn't about her. It's about us." I stepped aside, letting him in. The firelight flickered across his wet boots as he entered. He dropped the bag near the door. Metal clanked faintly inside. "What's in the bag?" I asked. He hesitated. "Tools." "I see." He sat down heavily in one of the chairs by the hearth. The silence between us stretched long and thin. "Leonard," he said finally, voice low, "I lost everything. The business, the house, even Emma. You were right. I ruined it all." I said nothing. "I came here to make it right," he continued. "I don't want money. I don't want property. I need your help. A second chance." His words sounded honest. But his eyes, those slick salesman eyes, still had that glint of calculation, faint but alive. "You always had a way with speeches," I said quietly. "But this one feels rehearsed." He frowned. "I'm serious, Leonard." I raised a hand. "Let's not pretend this is about redemption. You didn't come to apologize. You came to manipulate, one last time." He looked down, his jaw tightening. Then, after a long pause, he whispered, "You're right." When he looked up again, the mask was gone. The glint in his eyes turned to steel. "I came to take what's mine." He lunged for the bag. I was already moving. He unzipped it fast, and out came a crowbar, glinting in the firelight. "Don't make me do this, old man," he shouted. I didn't move, didn't flinch. I just stood there, calm as the lake outside. "You already made your choice, Tyler. You just didn't realize I made mine weeks ago." "What?" he snapped. I nodded toward the wall. "See that red switch near the mantel?" He turned his head, confused, and that's when the floor groaned beneath him. He'd stepped right onto the loose board again, the one that triggered the emergency lock. There was a sharp click. Then the shutters slammed down over every window, sealing the room in. Tyler froze. "What the?" "The house protects what it loves," I said softly. He swung the crowbar toward me, wild and desperate. But his boots slipped on the oiled floorboard, and the metal clanged harmlessly against the hearth. "Listen to me," he shouted. "You don't understand." "Oh, I understand perfectly," I said, stepping closer. "You used my daughter's trust. You turned grief into leverage. You tried to steal the home I built with my wife's memory." He panted, eyes darting to the door. "You'll go to jail for this." "No," I said calmly. "You broke in again. You brought a weapon. Every camera outside just caught it." His breathing quickened. "You're bluffing." I pointed to the faint red light on the corner shelf, the live recording indicator from the camera feed. He stared at it, realization dawning too late. "Sit down," I said. He did. Slowly. His hands trembled. I poured 2 glasses of whiskey and set one in front of him. "Drink," I said. He hesitated, then took it. We sat in silence as the fire cracked between us. "I didn't want this," I said finally. "You forced me to defend my peace. My wife used to say, 'Leonard, never fight fire with fire. Fight it with patience.' So that's what I did. I let you burn yourself out." He laughed bitterly. "You think you've won?" "No," I said. "I think you've lost." He finished the whiskey in one gulp, slamming the glass down. "You'll regret this. I'll tell everyone." "Tell them what?" I asked softly. "That you broke into my home twice? That you threatened an old man with a crowbar? The cameras caught it all, Tyler. The police will too." He went silent. His face fell, pale, beaten, defeated. "You've got until sunrise," I said, standing up. "The sheriff's office will get the footage by morning if I don't cancel the upload." He blinked. "Upload?" "Automatic backup," I said. "It's already running." He looked at the camera light again. and I could see the exact moment his hope died. He didn't beg. He didn't curse. He just stared into the fire like a man realizing he'd been outplayed by the last person he thought capable of it. When he finally stood, his voice was barely a whisper. "You're a cruel old man, Leonard." I shook my head. "No, I'm a peaceful one. But peace has its price." He left without another word. I watched his car disappear through the fog, its taillights swallowed by the trees. The forest went quiet again, truly quiet this time. I went back inside, sat in Martha's old chair, and whispered, "It's done, love. He won't hurt her again." The fire popped softly, and I could have sworn the picture frame on the mantel flickered with light. Just for a second, like she was nodding. Outside, dawn began to touch the trees. The storm was over, and for the first time in years, the house finally felt like home again. Morning came gray and heavy with fog. The forest seemed to exhale after a long night, the air cool and damp, the light soft as memory. I stood on the porch, watching the lake breathe. The reflection of the cabin shimmered on the still water, peaceful, unbroken. The world looked exactly as it had yesterday, but everything inside me had shifted. Emma found me there an hour later, still holding my coffee. "Dad?" she asked, voice gentle. "You didn't sleep, did you?" I smiled faintly. "Didn't need to." She stepped beside me, rubbing her hands against the cold. "I dreamt of Mom last night." She was sitting by the fire, humming that old song she loved. It felt so real. I turned to her slowly. Maybe it was. She smiled, half believing, half wanting to. After breakfast, I went into town. The sheriff's office sat near the edge of Miller's Lake, a small, pale building that smelled of coffee and old paper. "Morning, Leonard," Sheriff McKenna said, looking up from his desk. "What brings you down from your forest kingdom? Something you might want to see," I replied, setting the flash drive on his desk. He raised an eyebrow. "Footage." "Last night," I said. "Trespassing, attempted assault, breaking, and entering. I want it on record, but I'm not pressing charges, unless he tries again." He plugged in the drive, clicked through the files, and whistled softly. "Your cameras caught everything. Smart setup." "Old carpenter's habit," I said. "Measure twice, cut once." He chuckled. "You sure you don't want us to bring him in?" I looked out the window at the quiet lake. "I don't need him in jail, Sheriff. I just need him out of her life." McKenna studied me for a long moment, then nodded. "Understood." By the time I returned to the cabin, Emma was sitting at the table, phone in hand, tears streaking down her cheeks. "What's wrong?" I asked. She looked up, shaking her head. "He called me. Said he's leaving town. Said the police already showed up at his apartment asking questions. He knows you recorded everything." I pulled out a chair and sat beside her. "Good. Maybe he'll finally learn something." Her voice trembled. "He said you ruined his life." I sighed. "He ruined his own." Emma wiped her eyes, exhaling shakily. "I don't know what to feel. I loved him once, Dad. I thought he was different." I reached across the table and took her hand. "Love doesn't make us blind, Emma. It just makes us hope too long." She nodded, silent tears falling onto her sleeve. "Thank you for protecting me." "You don't need to thank me," I said softly. "That's what fathers do." For the next few days, quiet returned. The cabin breathed again, its old rhythm restored. I repaired the loose boards, polished the mantel, cleaned the windows. Every hammer tap felt lighter now, less like fixing and more like healing. Emma started writing again, short stories, sketches, things she said Mom would have liked. I caught her smiling more often. Sometimes she'd sit on the porch with a cup of tea, watching the sunset the same way Martha used to. It felt, for once, like peace wasn't something I had to defend, just something I had to keep alive. One afternoon, while stacking firewood, I found Tyler's business card tucked under the windshield wiper of my truck. Just his name, number, and a single handwritten line. "I'm leaving Oregon. You win." I stood there for a while, the card trembling slightly between my fingers. Then I tore it in half, fed it to the flames, and watched it curl into ash. Weeks passed. The sheriff called once more to confirm Tyler had packed up, sold his assets, and vanished somewhere down south. Said he was starting over, McKenna told me. Didn't say where. Didn't ask for forgiveness either. "Good," I said. "Sometimes the quietest endings are the most merciful." The sheriff chuckled. "You always did have your own brand of justice, Leonard." That night, Emma and I sat by the fire. The flames painted her face in gold and orange. And for the first time in a long time, she looked truly at peace. "Do you ever miss Mom?" she asked. "Every day," I said. "But I think she'd be proud of you." Emma leaned her head on my shoulder. "She'd be proud of you too, Dad." We sat there for a long time, watching the logs burn down to embers, listening to the crackle of wood and the sigh of wind through the chimney. Outside, the forest hummed softly, no longer a warning, but a lullaby. Before going to bed, I stood by the window, looking out at the quiet lake. The moon floated high, silver and perfect. The cabin's reflection shimmered in the water, steady and strong. And for the first time in years, I felt Martha beside me, not as a memory, but as presence. Like the walls themselves remembered her laughter, her warmth, her patience. "Thank you," I whispered, "for teaching me how to fight without hate." The candle on the mantel flickered once, and then steadied. Peace. Finally, peace. Autumn came early that year. The forest turned gold overnight, maples and birches blushing red against the gray sky. The air smelled of pine and smoke, and the mornings brought a chill that wrapped the cabin in silence. Emma had begun commuting into town a few days each week for work. When she left, the house felt still, the way it used to be, except it didn't feel lonely anymore. It felt whole. I filled my days with small things, sanding an old chair, patching the roof, cleaning the gutters. But one afternoon, while sweeping the storage loft above the workshop, I found something I hadn't seen in years. A wooden box, plain, dusty, with Martha's handwriting carved faintly on top. "For when you're ready." I sat there for a long moment, hands trembling over the lid. The smell of cedar and thyme filled the air as I lifted it open. Inside, neatly folded, was a letter tied with a piece of blue ribbon, the same ribbon she'd used to tie her hair back when she painted by the window. The paper was yellowed, the ink slightly faded, but her handwriting was as soft and steady as her voice used to be. I took a deep breath and began to read. "My dearest Leonard, if you're reading this, it means I'm no longer there to remind you to eat your breakfast or scold you for leaving your tools on the porch. It also means you've built that cabin, the one you used to dream about. I hope you finished it the way you always imagined, slow, careful, with love in every nail. But Leonard, I need you to remember something important. That house isn't just ours. It belongs to peace, to healing. Don't let it become a battlefield, even if the world tries to make it one. You've always been strong in the quietest ways. That's what I loved most about you. You never shouted, never hurt, never took more than you gave. But please, my love, don't let the pain of others turn that strength into armor. If someone wrongs you, forgive them. If someone tries to take from you, protect what's sacred, but don't lose yourself doing it. And if our daughter ever needs you, don't just protect her. Teach her that kindness doesn't mean surrender, and that boundaries can exist without hate. I know the world isn't gentle, Leonard, but you were always my proof that goodness doesn't have to be loud to survive. So promise me this. When peace returns, open the windows. Let the light in again. Don't let the house go dark without me. With all my love, Martha." By the time I finished reading, the light had dimmed, and the forest outside burned gold through the window. My hands shook as I folded the letter back into the box. I sat there, staring at her words, at the gentleness in every line, and something inside me cracked open, soft and painful. I had done everything to protect this home, this memory, this peace. But I'd done it with edges, sharp ones. And even if my revenge had been quiet, it was still revenge. Martha had always believed in mercy that didn't need to be seen. I had forgotten that somewhere between grief and anger. I walked downstairs slowly, her letter clutched against my chest. The cabin was silent, the fire low. I placed the box on the mantel beneath her picture. For a long while, I just stood there, letting her presence fill the room again. Then, for the first time in years, I opened every window. Cool autumn wind poured in, carrying the scent of pine and leaves. The curtains swayed like soft breaths. The house sighed, alive, open, forgiving. And in that moment, I finally understood her last line. Peace isn't something you win. It's something you allow. That evening, Emma came home early. She found me sitting on the porch, letter still beside me. "Dad," she asked softly, "are you okay?" I nodded. "Better than I've been in years." She sat beside me. "What's that?" I handed her the letter. She read it slowly, tears pooling in her eyes. When she finished, she pressed the paper to her heart. She knew you, she whispered. Every part of you. She always did, I said. Even the parts one tried to hide. We sat there together, watching the last of the sunlight bleed through the trees. The lake shimmered with the color of fire and gold, like the world was exhaling everything it had carried too long. Before we went inside, I looked at Emma and said, I've been thinking. About what? About forgiveness, I said. And about Tyler. Her expression changed, wary, wounded. Dad, I raised a hand gently. Not to bring him back. Just to let him go. For real this time. She nodded slowly. I think I need that too. We stood there in silence, letting the cool air wash over us. Then she whispered, Do you think Mom can see us? I smiled. If peace has a window, she's sitting right behind it. That night, after Emma went to bed, I returned to the porch with Martha's letter in my hand. The moon was full, hanging low over the treetops. I read the last lines again. When peace returns, open the windows. I whispered to the wind, They're open, love. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel alone. Winter arrived quietly that year. Snow fell in soft, patient layers, covering the world in silence. The lake froze at the edges, the trees bowed beneath white weight, and the cabin stood steady, like it had been waiting for this calm all along. Emma stayed through the first snow. She said she'd only visit for a week, but a week became two, and two became the kind of stay that didn't need an end date. She started painting again, landscapes, skies, portraits of the forest at dawn. Sometimes I'd find her sitting by the window, brush in hand, whispering, Mom would have loved this light. And she was right. The light in these woods was unlike anywhere else. Gentle but sure, as if it forgave everything it touched. One morning, just after sunrise, I woke to the sound of footsteps on the porch. Not hurried, not afraid, just steady. I stepped outside to find Emma standing there, her hair tangled from sleep, wrapped in one of Martha's knitted scarves. The snow stretched in every direction, untouched except for her footprints. She turned to me and smiled. It's beautiful, isn't it? It is, I said. You can almost hear it breathe. We stood there a while, watching the sun climb between the pines. The golden light spilled over the snow, turning it into a field of stars. After a long silence, Emma said, I got a letter yesterday. From who? Tyler, she said softly. It was short. Just, I'm sorry. I hope you both find peace. I exhaled slowly. That's more than I expected. Do you hate him? She asked. I thought for a long time. The wind whispered through the trees, brushing snow from the branches. No, I said finally. I don't hate him. I don't forgive him either. But I don't carry him anymore. She nodded, her eyes wet with quiet understanding. Mom would like that answer. She helped me find it, I said, glancing at the letter still resting on the mantel inside. Later that day, we chopped firewood together. The rhythm of the axe against the stump echoed through the stillness, sharp and steady. Every swing sent small clouds of snow drifting into the sunlight. Afterward, we sat by the fire, mugs of cocoa steaming between our hands. Emma looked around the cabin, the old photos, the worn books, the hand-carved frames, and said, You know, Dad, I think this house healed all of us. I smiled. Houses can't heal people, sweetheart, but they can remind us who we are. She leaned back, watching the firelight flicker against the logs. What are you going to do now? I looked out the window, where the trees swayed gently under the wind. Keep living. Keep fixing things that need fixing. Maybe build something new. Maybe teach you how. She laughed softly. I'd like that. That evening, as dusk settled over the forest, I walked down to the lake. The ice gleamed in fading light, smooth as glass. My breath fogged in front of me, and for a moment, I saw my reflection in the frozen water, older, quieter, but lighter somehow. I whispered to it, You did good, old man. Behind me, the cabin glowed warm against the white world. Smoke curled gently from the chimney. Through the window, I could see Emma painting by the fire, her brush moving in calm, deliberate strokes. She'd inherited Martha's steadiness, her quiet grace. And maybe, in some small way, she'd inherited my patience too. That night, I couldn't sleep. The stars outside were too bright, the sky too clear. So I got up, threw on my coat, and stepped onto the porch one last time. The snow was untouched again, glimmering under the moonlight. I could hear the faint hum of the forest, a sound I'd learned to read like a language. I closed my eyes and listened. The creak of wood beneath my feet, the soft hiss of wind through branches, the heartbeat of the house, quiet, strong, alive. And beneath it all, I heard something else. A whisper, faint, familiar. Martha's voice. "Open the windows," she said. I smiled. "They're open, love. Always." The next morning, Emma found me on the porch, coffee in hand, watching the sunrise spill across the frozen lake. "Sleep well?" she asked. "Didn't need to," I said, grinning. The world was wide awake. She handed me a new canvas she'd finished during the night, a painting of the cabin surrounded by light. Snow glowing, windows open, smoke curling into a golden sky. At the bottom, she'd written one small line in the corner. "Peace lives here." I stared at it for a long time. "It's perfect," I whispered. She smiled. "Then it's yours." I shook my head. "No, sweetheart. It's ours. Just like this place." And as the sun rose higher over the forest, the cabin filled with light. Warm, forgiving, eternal. The house Martha and I built by hand had survived storms, loss, greed, and ghosts of the past. Now it stood for something more, a promise. That love, the quiet kind, the patient kind, doesn't end when people do. It stays. In the walls, in the air, in the light between the trees. And as long as the windows remain open, it never truly leaves.